only in America. This is really an example of the business of boxing and the boxing of boxing too. R.I.P. George Foreman, who lived several lives. He's passed at the age of 76, and an extraordinary life. An extraordinary life of different opportunities. An extraordinary life of different, connected, but different worlds. Won the gold at the Olympic Games at 19, beat Joe Frazier for the championship, the heavyweight championship of the world, when he was 24. And then, of course, was involved in one of the most extraordinary boxing events and actually fights. That's a business of boxing. With the boxing of boxing, the Rumble in the Jungle, where we had the huge concert in Kinshasa. And then we had the fight with the rope-a-dope situation with George Foreman, the baddest man in boxing at the time, with the huge punch. A man who was not one for many words. And the absolute flip side of that was Muhammad Ali. And allowing him to punch himself out, Muhammad Ali took a big beating in that fight. And, you know, for me, that fight is famous also for Don King stepping over the prone man to go to the winner. But what a great fight as well. But that wasn't it. He retired in 77, did George Foreman, became born again and became a preacher, was married 4 times, and then came back at the age of 45 in 93, I want to say, and beat Michael Moorer for the WBA and IBF title. And I've just rewatched that fight. And the great thing about that fight is, and the frightening thing about that fight is, there is no head movement from either fighter. Foreman took an enormous amount of punishment, and it was about who can get that big punch in, and Foreman had a huge big punch and 2 huge right hands, put Moorer down, and out for the count. But that was extraordinary. And he then retired at the age 46. He was the oldest champion. We need to talk about Bernard Hopkins as well, of course, but then became a successful entrepreneur. We've got the George Foreman grill and all of that, and he became a celebrity. Only in America, the phrase goes. That's the phrase from Don King, of course. But he lived several lives and had an extraordinary career in a way that other boxers who hit the heights do not. An extraordinary life in the business of boxing. In the business of boxing, to win those titles, to retire, to come back, to win more titles, to then parlay a career outside of boxing. That takes a lot. And it's not often that we're speaking of boxers who are retired and saying how wonderful their career has been. As a boxer, it was the power that was the most important thing. He was a bad man, a very bad man in the boxing ring. You know, that was the selling before the Rumble in the Jungle. And he was more than that. But in the boxing ring, he was about the power and the nastiness and all of that. And even when he came back, he was about durability. And he can always hit you with that punch. And he did. Extraordinary situation. An extraordinary life. And an extraordinary boxing success story. And you don't often hear of those, do you? Ta-ta.